Hey everybody, I've been heavy-hearted and deeply distressed these past few days trying to process the tragedy of George Floyd's death in America, how it occurred, why it occurred, what was done to make it occur, and all the surrounding events that have emerged from that, and the struggles of trying to make sense of the various aspects of debate and conversation and statements and requirements and demands that are coming to the fore, with that of the potential for broken relationships and through disagreements. And I've struggled greatly with that, and this has not been for me an easy day, as I have tried to, from 6 o'clock this morning, it's now 8 in the evening, try to gather my thoughts and feelings to where I can at least make some kind of declaration. Statement's too big a word. It's not really a statement. Some kind of expression is probably the best description I could use. Some kind of expression of my thinking and where it is taking me, and what I would like to share with you. Now, I appreciate in such a sensitive situation as this, for some I may say too much, for some I will say too little. For some I may say the things you want me to say. For some I may not say the things that you would like me to say. I do not put myself forward as an expert on this subject matter. What I will say is that I have tried to talk particularly and to learn from members of the black community and friends of mine who are of African American, those who have also from very specific slave families in their genealogy. And I have found an interesting mix of viewpoints from those across the country, which some could be dismissed, some not be dismissed, and the argument of, well, that's a left-wing view, that's a right-wing view, whatever. It's so easy, folks, for us to dismiss others because they don't hold the same convictions as we do to the same degree, or they don't have the same persuasions, or we don't like their argument. And having been raised in a very forward evangelical Pentecostal background, I know how intolerance can creep in from all levels, and how we can limit our own willingness to listen to a wider debate, and perhaps in losing that we miss the real and the true secrets to resolving the very problem that we're all wanting to resolve. I think all of us want an end to racism, absolutely and completely. We want an end to discrimination. We want equality. We want justice. I think we all do. And so we need to listen. And the thing is not for us to fight our corner. The thing is for us to try and move together towards a solution that in love and kindness will bring about the end that I think we all desire and are looking for. If there's one thing that I've learned from my study of Scripture, it is this, that if we get stuck in a story, we risk missing the truth that transcends the story. And I would offer that as an advice in this and say we must not minimize or disregard the story of current events, particularly with George Floyd being at the center of it. But if we get stuck in the story, we may risk missing the truth that transcends the story. And hopefully, as I talk to you, that the reason for me saying that will emerge. The situation that we face is nothing new in the history of civilization. We have made progress over the years, but to our shame, and I don't use that word lightly, shame is a word that I would very, very rarely use. some may feel it's not the right word now, but then maybe it is the right word, in that it implies to us the right emotion, that we have made progress, but to our shame, too slowly. You only have to take a brief look at world history as far back as we have records to realize it's all inseparably intermingled with empire, colonialism, and subjugation. We must be real careful not just to look at this situation from one issue of empire and colonialism. This has been going on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, whether it was the Roman Empire or the Byzantine Empire or the British Empire or whatever it was. This has been going on for thousands of years. So these problems are not new, and one could argue we should have resolved them by now. But we haven't. So we've got to face the issue. I think we've made progress, but as I said, I think way too slowly. It's interesting, as I've listened to various aspects of conversation on this matter, that in the Gospels, in Luke chapter 7, there is a little story recorded there of a Roman centurion whose servant, the actual word in there in the text is more accurately translated slave, it gets sick. And it says that this centurion loved his slave, his servant, and sent word to Jesus that Jesus might come and heal this servant. And the messengers who came tried to qualify with Jesus the right of this centurion to have his servant healed, because they said he loves our nation and he has built a synagogue. Cut a long story short, the servant dies, a message goes to Jesus, but the centurion understands authority, and he said, look, I have authority. I say to a servant, go, and he goes. I say to a soldier, go, and he goes. I say to a soldier, come, and he comes. And he says, and I say to a slave, do this, and he does it. But I'm not worthy for you to come under my roof, but I know you have authority, and if you'll just speak the word, I know my servant will be healed. Now, the story says that Jesus turned to the people and said, I've never seen faith like this in all of Israel, and go home, your servant is well. Now, what I want to say about that is, isn't it interesting that the very issues that we are looking at the moment are referred to in this little story? Whatever one says about the centurion, he was a servant of the Roman Empire and would have to outwork and fulfill the instructions of the empirical masters who had subjugated the nation of Israel and brought it under oppression. And yet he was kind to a slave. Is this a justification for having slaves? Not at all. But there was kindness in there in this situation. And the plea was, look, he's done great things for our city, so you should heal his kid, because we were all blessed because he put money into the city. Can you see how, quite amazingly, there are parallels for so many of the conversations, arguments, frustrations that have been coming out in recent days? Now, I don't raise this issue to make a point other than to say that 2,000 years ago, these same issues that we are wrestling with now were happening then. And the sad thing is, although they were happening and there may have been kindness, we have not managed somehow for us, I mean, let's just say in the last 2,000 years to resolve those issues. And yeah, we need to have a greater understanding. We need to do better. I would say for us at QChurch in York that we have committed ourselves to a hopeful vulnerability that comes from living by the statement that we would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned. And I will stand by that statement in this situation and say this drives me in the way that I want to acquire understanding. So hopefully we can move this conversation and move this reality along in the context of the subject matter at hand. My own personal experience has shown me that where there is not an environment that we have answers that can't be questioned, we have to have that. If we don't have an environment where answers can be questioned, my experience has shown me that where this is not a lived reality, that honest debate is replaced by dismissive dogma. And that dismissive dogma develops into a self-propagating fundamentalism. I've been there in my upbringing. And that labels anyone and everyone who does not think the exact same way or does not use the prescribed prayers and confessions a heretic who should be tortured until they recant. Now, we're not in the Middle Ages, so we don't use the torture methods of the Middle Ages, but we can use things like social media. We can use all kinds of ways to try and torture the heretic until they recant of their heresy. And this for me is too near a mirror of the dreaded Spanish Inquisition of the Middle Ages, the Salem witch trials, the lynching culture of the Wild West and the Deep South. We simply become propagators of that same system, just by different methods and different applications. And this cannot be the way. It cannot be the way. Much as we may want to hate, hatred can only divide us, never bring us together, never resolve the problem or bring a solution to the debate or the challenge. Our recent history, in all honesty, doesn't make pleasant reading. And the things I will mention this is not an exhaustive list by any means at all. It really is just picking a few things that may bring this home to us, but it's not pleasant reading. You know, think about it. Segregation in America. It really isn't. It isn't that long. It's in my lifetime that segregation in America actually was challenged to the extent that you know, black men and women could ride the same buses and eat at the same restaurants, etc. That's far too recent for me to be comfortable with. We should have learned more and could have learned more, but didn't and haven't, and it's unpleasant. What about apartheid in South Africa? But I also bring in on that, what about the mass executions of the Akolai and Lango tribes in Uganda and the expulsion of Asians? There's the racism, the genocide in Rwanda of Tutsi and Hutus, the persecution of Christians and Muslims in northeast India, which goes on this very day. Or about so-called modern slavery through people trafficking, or more recently the death of Stephen Lawrence in London at the hands of racist thugs in 1993, which started a process, I think, of challenge for us in the UK to think about how we are racist and in what way we express maybe an institutional racism. It made us think about that. And most recently, of course, George Floyd in the US, the victim of unwarranted police brutality. The death of George Floyd has put the issue of racial discrimination and oppression of minorities front and centre of our attention, for now at least. I know enough about humanity that this could and will blow over unless we let it affect us in the right way and in the right spirit, so that we can move this whole thing forward that has struggled throughout human history to move forward, about which we are more forward now than we have ever been in many of our countries, but still not far enough. See, many of us, me included, are willingly wrestling to fully understand the Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. Black lives do matter. I think some of this is a generational thing of having experienced different things to the younger generation, and not only ourselves but through our parents and grandparents and their experiences. But believe me, we are willingly wrestling to fully understand the Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter equation. Black lives do matter, they do, and we hold to that. I hold to that. And I'm trying to walk a journey in what that looks like and what that means for me and maybe my influence on people that I lead. But we must remember our world is rife with injustices. If this current event refocuses our attention to be actively correcting those injustices, then we will have both lived in and transcended the story. See, we've got to transcend the story. Otherwise, we get stuck within it, and the anger and the bitterness and the sense of retribution it will not bring us to the outcome that we are looking for. I think there is a universally shared abhorrence at the death of George Floyd. However, views on the reasons behind the problem are diverse, even in the black community, whether we like it or not. And that itself stirs controversy. I know that it does, deep controversy with some of you, but we should listen. My personal view, this is me speaking. I remember there's an amazing bit in the Bible where Paul's talking to some people and he says, okay, this is the Lord talking. And then he says, okay, this is me, not the Lord. This is my view. Well, this is me speaking. I am going to listen to a black person with a differing view to the one that some hold in respect to the Black Lives Matter debate than I am a white person from anywhere who holds an opinion on the Black Lives Matter debate. It is primarily and in its foremost application something that we should hear the voices of the black community. And if some do not say the things we'd like them to say, they can be labeled as Republicans, fascists, ignorant, whatever, and we do that. But I do want to listen to primarily black voices over white voices, but then also white voices complimenting, coming in, and at least sharing in the pain that this brings. And hopefully, because it's going to take all of us, if we are going to resolve this problem. And so we should make space for that. I know feelings are strong in some quarters. But listen to me, when reason is replaced by insult, and intellect by raw emotion, and curiosity by preconception, instead of ascending to a new enlightenment, we descend into the very mindset that created the problem in the first place. This should not be a win or lose situation, but a surrender by all and to all situation. Otherwise, we just flip the coin or turn the sides where the oppressed become the oppressors and the wounded become the wounders. So where does that take us? Martin Luther King's message was love, and it got him killed. Nelson Mandela's message was forgiveness from 27 years in a prison cell, and it got him the presidency. Strange that one avowed peace and died violently, and one avowed violence in his early days at least and died peacefully. I do not know the answer. Nelson Mandela wrote, "In real life, we deal not with gods, but with ordinary humans like ourselves. Men and women who are full of contradictions, who are stable and fickle, strong and weak, famous and infamous. people in whose bloodstream the muckworm battles daily with potent pesticides. That's the words of Nelson Mandela, and the struggle to press through in all of us to get this right. Their combined wisdom call us to center everything in love, tolerance, forgiveness, and reconciliation. True tolerance is an act of love, not law. We don't primarily need to change the law. We need to change the love. Let me finish with some Nelson Mandela quotes. And he wrote this in his book, Long Walk to Freedom, in 1995. It was published. And it's kind of a little humorous dig. In my country, we go to prison first and then become president. That's Nelson Mandela. That's his sense of humour. We must strive to be moved by a generosity of spirit that will enable us to outgrow the hatred and conflicts of the past. You will achieve more in this world through acts of mercy than you will through acts of retribution. It never hurts to think too highly of a person. Often they become ennobled and act better because of it. Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. Forgiveness liberates the soul. It removes fear. That's why it's such a powerful weapon. Reconciliation does not mean forgetting or trying to bury the pain of conflict, but that reconciliation means working together to correct the legacy of past injustice. For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. No one is born hating another person because of the colour of his skin, or his background, or his religion. They must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. I pray that we find that place of love, so that in that place of love, righteousness and justice can flow like a mighty river. I love you. I bless you. I hope this helps in some small way.